Greetings, Padawans, and welcome to the Archives. Here to unlock this holocron, here's the man of the hour, Jedi Master, AlsoTeeko.
And don't forget about Judah, Fred, and everyone's favorite rebel,
MJ. It's good, guys. It is your boy, AlsoTeeko. We also have Fred in the call. I'm playing some Star Wars games on the screen, so if you're watching on YouTube, you get a nice little visual as we hang out and talk about some Star Wars. As I said, we have Fred in the call, and this is the Archives Podcast, episode 8. We have a episode to be recorded this weekend, but we wanted to make sure that you guys got an episode this week as I've been away on vacation. Apologies, and I hope that, I got a couple messages asking me where the podcast was, but I hope that all of you weren't disappointed or upset that we missed out on a week. Just needed a little break, not from the podcast and not from the content, but just from the everyday hustle. And I just wanted to enjoy myself when I was on my vacation. So shout out to all of you. Shout out to everyone listening. And we're just going to get started with the podcast. A nice casual one. And just talking about, some Star Wars. As most of you probably know, the Ahsoka show has been going on, and it's been one of the best Star Wars shows IMO, especially live action. But Fred's not exactly caught up to date, neither is Judah. I was able to watch the episode. My flight got delayed on Tuesday, and it essentially made it so I couldn't come home and watch the episode live, right?
Yeah.
But when I was on my train home, or my train to get picked up by my brother, I watched the episode, and I'll talk more about it in my breakdown, which I'll have out literally, say tomorrow, 9 o'clock in the morning. But the show's been great. The show's been really, really, really good. And
oh yeah, for sure.
The thing I wanted to talk with you about, Fred, is kind of like the future of Star Wars shows and kind of the direction that you think that we should go, because obviously this Heir to the Empire thing is going to be a time period of content. Based on where you're at in Ahsoka and based on just your Star Wars knowledge, or lack thereof, like, what would you like to see? What would you prefer to see?
Honestly, like, what we've been getting so far is perfect for me, bro. Like, good content, like, we're getting we're getting things that we didn't necessarily want as well, but like are glad to see, and they're being done the right way, like, for example, Anakin coming back there,
Yeah.
So I'd like to see more of that, like, since Dave Filoni's actually doing a really good job on that, I'd like to see him do more of it, because I feel like he'll do it justice,
Yeah, and that's
so I definitely
100%. As long as I feel like with Star Wars at the moment, we kind of needed some fan service, and I think we're getting the right amount of fan service, right? Because maybe episode, I've liked every episode. I thought every episode was fire, but there's obviously like some gas episodes. And episode 7 is, people think like it took a step back. I felt like it put the pedal to the metal because of just how much in canon lore, like from Rebels and Revenge of the Sith and Phantom Menace, that I was able to pick out, let alone like the people who are even more hardcore than I am. But the thing that I want to start discussing here is something that I talked about with my boss, actually, because he asked me how the show was, and something really resonated with me. And it's the question of, when did fans start pretending to be critics? Because I feel like everyone is trying to be a critic rather than be a fan of the content and give.
Yeah, you're right, for sure.
I just feel like everyone just gives their take, and everyone just wants their take to be heard, and they'll jump on other people's takes, you know. And it's like, well, how about you just be a fan? Just be a fan of the content. It's just weird is all, because I feel like the line between fan and critic is superly blurred. I feel like it's super blurred when you have critics come out and say like, oh, Obi-Wan Kenobi is one of the best shows that we've ever seen, and then fans hate it, yet they're critiquing it and they're saying this, that, the other. That's why I really don't like to bring up writers or producers or directors. Like, I know it's a television show, it's a movie, it's an AP series, but at the end of the day, I just want to stay in universe because I'm a fan first and foremost, and I don't pretend to be a critic. I don't pretend to be a cockney with my corncob pipe and pretend I'm some sort of cinema geek. Like, I'm not in it for the cinema. I'm in it because Star Wars is dope.
Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from. A lot of people kind of they get attached to Star Wars because like the story is like so, like, it's so good, you know, and it's so relatable.
Mm-hmm.
Especially like to people who sometimes want to escape the real world and kind of just, you know, get lost in this new galaxy far, far away. You know, it's all nice and shiny. Mm-hmm. And then there's like little pieces and parts of it that they don't like, so they nitpick at those, and eventually it like balls up into like this big like critique, you know. And it's like, you have to remember, this is not your masterpiece. This is, you know, this is George Lucas's masterpiece, you know.
Yeah, and I understand it.
You know, exactly. Like,
the way you broke it down, I get that. Like, when people are so invested in something, they want to stay invested in it. Just the only issue I have with that is that and that's where I think the line blurring comes into play. Like, you need to set boundaries and not just blow yourself up over it, because at the end of the day, you got to be a fan first and foremost, in my opinion. You got to be a fan. And whether or not you find that place, I feel like everyone deserves a place to discuss and talk about what they love, right? And I'm not trying to gatekeep or nitpick anything to do with that. But I will say there is just a point in time that people do need to just relax a little bit. And if something's bad, then let it be bad. But you can't sit there and pretend like you knew any better, you could have done any better, because that's just, A, it's not true, and B, it's just not fair, because everyone knows hindsight's 2020. Everybody knows hindsight's 2020. And Sam Witwer, who's one of my dogs. I love me some Sam Witwer. He made a really, really good statement. And it was The Last Jedi a tough movie? Like, yes. But you see all these, like, how The Last Jedi could have been better videos out there. And everyone's always perceiving it in hindsight. But the decisions that really matter are the ones that happen on set, when money is being spent, money is being burned, and you have to make those sharp decisions right then and there. Like, those are the ones that truly matter. And that's very true. Like, of course I can be like, oh, Luke Skywalker should have taken the lightsaber. But obviously there was a story that they were trying to tell. And
Yeah.
one thing that I try not to fall under is the whole, oh, Luke wouldn't have done that. He wouldn't have. But Luke did do that. So why did he do it? That's what I try and chase. That's what I try and figure out.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, you know, like you're like you and I, we're not the writers of Star Wars, bro. Again, we're just the passengers, man.
Yep.
These guys, they're the writers of Star Wars. They know what they want their characters to do. They know what their characters are like. You know, and as far as the thing where it's like Luke wouldn't do that, well, he did it. He did it. They wrote him doing that. And people can change. People change all the time. It's very easy to believe that Luke became a cynic because of the experiences throughout his life, you know? Like, the people change depending on their life experiences, you know? Like, I could have came out to be a completely different Fred. You could have been a completely different Trevor, you know? Based on our life experiences. So you can't tell me that, like, oh, Luke would never do that. You know, because, like, look at, like, man, you'd look at Anakin, like, and if you had no knowledge of Anakin, you'd watch him in the first movie, even the second movie, and you'd be like, oh, man, there's no way Anakin could turn to the dark side and murder a bunch of children and, you know, like, kill all of his Jedi Masters, etc. Like, there's no way he could ever do that. He did it.
Yep.
He changed.
Yeah,
he
and
was influenced by the outside force that changed him, you know?
And I feel like if Star Wars came out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like you don't change anything about the films, but simply just when they come out, everything else remains linear, stays the same. I wonder if people would actually sit there and say, "Oh, Anakin wouldn't turn to the dark side. Anakin wouldn't do that." I wonder if people actually would say that, because I feel like it's only the cynicism, if that's a word. Sounds like one. I feel like people are only being cynical about it because it's Disney Star Wars, and it's kind of like in the in a bar graph. Like, do you believe something very strongly, or do you disagree very strongly? I feel like with Disney Star Wars, it's either one or the other. Whereas I don't care who makes I care who makes Star Wars. I'm not gonna say I don't care. But whether it's George Lucas, whether it's Dave Filoni, whether it's Timothy Zahn in the books, whether it's Claudia Gray in the books, whether it's, you know, Jon Favreau with Mandalorian, obviously I care about who makes the product. As long as it's staying true to George Lucas's Star Wars, that's all that matters to me.
Yeah.
That's all that matters to me. I've never been one that's going to sit there and be a dickhead about it and say, oh, I'm not watching it. Like the Rey movie, for example. How many people do we know personally that aren't going to watch the Rey movie? And they say that, but I feel like they are going to watch it. You know what I mean? But
it's Star Wars.
I'm more than excited for that movie because I want to see what happens with the character. And I'm excited to see what happens with the character. The issue is, how many people have instantly just shot it down simply because it's Rey, you know? I feel like it's silly at this point. I feel like it's really silly.
Yeah, I definitely get that. Like, you know, when it comes to like the 7, 8, 9 trilogy, you know, like a lot of people were let down by certain aspects of it, you know. I think a lot of it also has to do with the fact that like a lot of people just connected so well with like Anakin and Luke that to see another person come in and be told like, yeah, your favorite's not the strongest anymore. Rey's the strongest now. it pissed a lot of people off.
Yeah.
And like, you have to accept it. Like, this is the Star Wars that has been envisioned. To lead a new generation.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how it's gonna be. Like, Rey is the strongest Jedi now. You can't stop it.
Mm-mm.
You can't stop it.
You can only hope to contain it.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're saying, and I wholeheartedly agree. I think if people just you don't have to give things a chance, because I'm not going to tell you what to watch, what not to watch, right? But as long as you're just fair about it, and you can't just say, oh, it's dog shit. Why is it dog shit? Rather, a lot of people, and I get this about the prequels, because I love the prequels. And I have people that say the prequels are the worst movies to ever come out in cinema, and I'm like, what are you on about? Like, why? Oh, Anakin's a whiny little bitch. Like, and this is a literal thing that some dude said. He said, Anakin's a whiny little bitch, the way that he acted at the Lars's house. And I'm like, the way that he acted after his mother literally just passed away, after his mom died in his arms, after being raped and pillaged by the Sand People, like, if he's not allowed to act however the fuck he wants, like, you're a freak. And it boggles my mind that not the revisionist history, but just the cherry picking that people do with these sorts of things, man. Because, like, at what point is, hey, it's just not good enough for me? At what point are you just going to admit that it's not good enough for you? Because it's just weird. It's just weird. It's an IP that I thoroughly enjoy and I thoroughly love. And, it is what it is. If you want to enjoy it, enjoy it. But you can't try and be an anti-fan. That's what I've been looking for. There's people that I feel like are just anti-fans of Star Wars. They want it to fail. They want it to do bad. Just so they can be on their high horse and say, oh, I knew it from the start that it was going to be bad. I knew it from the get-go. And I think that's just cringe. Like, just as a person, like, you're letting an IP that you clearly don't enjoy, clearly don't like, hang that much residence in your mind. Like, I love Star Wars because of Luke Skywalker, man. I love Star Wars because of Anakin and the pod race that I got to watch as a kid. And I was like, damn, I want to be like Anakin Skywalker when I grow up.
Yeah.
But to a lot of these people, man, I just don't know who, what, where, when, or why they're even Star Wars fans in the first place. Because they surely and literally don't act like it.
True.
If it's not
if
it's not exactly what they want, then they just hate on it.
Yeah.
And it's like, this galaxy is so fucking big. Sorry my language. But there's just so much to watch, to do, to read. Yet people say all the negative stuff, If you're only a fan like Ziskeg, he only likes the Sith stuff. He only likes the Old Republic. Good on him.
Yeah.
What does he do? He buys books. He reads books, reads comics about it. If Judah was here, that's what he would say. He's like, pick out the time period that you like and just dive into it. And I think that people just are hung up on hating on the product, and it's just weird to me.
Yeah, for sure.
Is there anything else out there besides like the Messi Ronaldo debate that people are this like?
There's so many things, bro. It's just that, like, we're not part of that, like, community, so it doesn't affect us as much. But, like, there's so many things that people argue over meaninglessly for no reason,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's just crazy.
I think that's just, and I don't even argue about this stuff. It's just, I kind of observe the arguing from the sidelines and the outside looking in, and it's just like, you guys are just wasting your time.
Yeah.
You're just
You
wasting your
arguing
time.
about it's not change. It happened. It was made.
Exactly. Like, no. And that's why I enjoy, because my favorite Star Wars YouTuber, Star Wars Theory, and he holds the same sentiment. Like, he doesn't care what you're a fan of. He only cares about what he's a fan of. So he's going to make content on the stuff that he's a fan of.
Yeah.
And you can't get mad that he doesn't make content about stuff that he doesn't enjoy, because that would just be, that would make him a hypocrite to himself. And that's the lesson that I needed to learn very, very late into my YouTubing career. I call it a career. Fucking hell. But yeah, like, we all saw, I just wasn't happy, wasn't doing the stuff that I loved, and just decided, hey, I'm gonna be happy, do what I want. And
yeah, exactly. If you're electively taking on something that, like, at one point maybe it seemed like it would be nice to do, you know, but as you go forward, it's like, oh well, you know, this is like more taxing on me than it is enjoyable, and I'm electively choosing to do this. Like, at that point, you just know you have to switch it up.
yeah, and that's all I needed to do with Star Wars as well, because it just got to the point where, you know, I'm not enjoying what's coming on, like, and that was with Mandalorian, end of Mandalorian season 1. I was like, why don't I just be a fan of what I'm a fan of, not worry about anything else? I like episodes 1 through 6. I think there's good bits about 7 through 9, but I'm just going to focus on what I love. And since I've done that, I've been super happy, not worried about anything to do with Star Wars, and just happy to see where they go from here. If they want to dabble in the Old Republic, I'd love it. If they want to shoot off in the future and tell some stories, I'd love it. I thought Andor was sick. Obi-Wan Kenobi had good things about it, but it just wasn't, that wasn't my Obi-Wan Kenobi. Book of Boba Fett, you have to just understand that that was a Mandalorian side quest episode series, and it ultimately just came down to it ultimately just came down to, why are we watching this if this was meant to be a Boba Fett show? And it took me a minute to understand this is a Mando show. And I from that point on, I got it. Like, if you're watching the Book of Boba Fett for Boba Fett, sure, you're gonna get a little bit of, like, backstory, and I liked the Book of Boba Fett for the most part, because you got Tusken lore, you got Mandalorian lore a little bit. But that's the one question everybody had, is what happened to Boba Fett? Did he die in the Sarlacc pit? Well, that question got answered, but then they just kept telling the Mandalorian story. And when you look at it in that perspective, that's okay, because it is a Mandalorian show.
Yeah, you know, because, like, if you think about it, right, like, in like, let's go to one of our other niches, right, like the wrestling world, right? When like, the Undertaker comes back, right, and he fights Roman Reigns, he's not doing it because he's the star of the show. He's doing it because Roman's the star.
Yeah, and he's putting him over.
He's trying to show up. Yeah, he's putting him over, exactly. That's what Boba's doing. He's putting over the Mando show. He's explaining, all the things that, like, happened, all the, like, he's just explaining this new, the Mandalorian, he's explaining all of that. And he's
Yep.
putting over the Mandalorian. So, like, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah. And
That
he's
aspect.
passing the torch to him.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, once I understood that context, and you have to, like, you feel for original trilogy fans. You feel for them.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you have to also understand it's, I feel like Triple H saying this, it's best for business. But it really is, because, like...
What is happening? Move on.
Yeah.
We're in Mando now. Yeah, move on.
And
the trilogy happened. The trilogy.
That's why they brought back Grogu, because it's best for business. Yeah. I hate the guy. Yeah. I'm not a fan of him. I have a poster on my wall. Don't like him.
And JT said he'd pick him first chance he got, so...
It's just one of those things. You have to accept it and take it in stride, and just know that no matter what you do, what you try, you can't change it. And honestly, that's okay. That's okay. Like, we as fans, we shouldn't have I know this sounds fucked. We shouldn't have a say in what happens in Star Wars. We shouldn't. There's too many voices. There's way too many voices to have a say in what happens, bro. Because, sure, there's probably a majority that all think similarly, but even then, like, we should not be influencing this series apart from, like, support, Like, of course, we're going to support it and push it forward, but we shouldn't, like, jump onto the wagon ourselves, because we're just weighing it down at that point, Mm-hmm.
And then, like, supporting it, picking it up, and pushing it forward, we're dragging it down. So.
Yeah, and at a certain point, you just need to sit back and be a fan of it. Let them know what you think about it, Make videos, tweet, do whatever you want to do. But just don't be weird about it. Don't let it occupy your mind and take you away from the real world. Like, it's going to really do something.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we're just fans. And that's okay. We don't all need to be critics. Everything's going to be fine. We're all chilling. I think people should just relax a little bit and not enjoy what's on the screen. I'm not telling you to enjoy it, but enjoy what you enjoy. Divulge in what you love. If there's something that you don't like, don't watch it. Don't worry about it. I have never watched the show Resistance because it's just not for me. I don't care. Season 2 of Visions, I stopped watching it because it was terrible. I'm not out here shitting on it. I just don't care about it.
Yeah.
I don't watch the sequels a whole lot, but I enjoy the sequels. I think there's decent stuff about them. I think they're good movies. It's just the story got discombobulated by a selfish writer who inherently ruined the sequels. But it happened, so you just have to get over it. And I'm trying my best. My best. But I'm not going to hang my hat on it because I don't have control nor focus to do so. It is what it is at the end of the day. And I know that sounds shitty, but you just can't worry. I guess is what I'm trying to say. You can't worry about these things.
Yeah. Honestly, man, like, here's another thing. I was like, what were people expecting with the sequels, Like, you made Anakin, he was badass, strong as hell. You made Luke, he was even more badass, strong as hell.
Mm-hmm.
Were they just expecting Rey to be like this weak, wimpy girl that just can't do nothing, bro? You have to make her better. Like, you can't just make like a worse Jedi to lead off the new franchise. You know what I'm saying? Like, she can't be like whack. She has to be strong. She
Yeah.
has to be stronger than the two badasses before her. Otherwise, how's she gonna take on the threat that even the badasses before her couldn't take down? You know,
Yep.
like.
And I feel like the way that they salvaged Rey, like, you have to commend it. They salvaged her very well, by making her a Palpatine. I think the story did get mudded up in episode 8. I feel like if the same guy made 8, the guy who made 7 and 9, if he made 8, I feel like you get a nice linear story. But for some reason, they opted for someone different to do 8. But I see what you mean. Like, Rey has to be powerful. And
Yeah, she can't be. She can't be weak.
in universe, it makes sense why Rey is powerful. Because there's such strong dark side force going on with Kylo, with Palpatine, with Snoke, with the First Order controlling things. And on the light side, literally all you have is Leia, who's just floundering as a general. Luke's cut off from the Force. Therefore, Rey has to get her powers accelerated by the Force. Because the Force has to balance out light and dark. The Force has to be in balance. So there's a reason why Rey's powers, they didn't come from nowhere. Like, they showed up just as if Fred never swung a baseball bat before, and he swings a bat and he hits a ball and he hits a single. Like, it's not like we're calling Fred the best baseball player of all time. But at the end of the day, it took Rey 3 movies to be fully atoned to the Force after reading the sacred Jedi texts, after learning with Luke and Leia. It took her a lot of time, but people just don't conceptualize that. And they don't realize that the Force was inherently injecting her with performance-enhancing drugs to get her atonement and get her skills to the level that they had to be, because everything happens by the will of the Force, and the Force has destinies for every living creature. Everything happens for a reason in Star Wars, just like it does in real life. So it took all that negative dark side force to happen to push Rey from this scavenger girl who said that something inside of her was always there, but she could only now just understand it. It took the Force putting its will into effect to put Rey as the most powerful Jedi. And that's okay. Rey can be the most powerful Jedi. It doesn't take away that Anakin is probably the most powerful Force user, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't take away that Anakin's the chosen one. Just because Anakin is the chosen one of the chosen one prophecy doesn't mean that Rey also can't be a candidate for the prophecy. You know what I mean? Just like Luke was a candidate for the prophecy. No one's up in arms that Luke was being called the chosen one. But as soon as someone says, oh, Rey could be the chosen one, like she brought balance to the Force, quite literally, then it's an issue. But no, I like how you said it. Like, Rey can't be just some wimpy girl. Like, she has to have a good amount of power. And she did. For all the right reasons. All the right reasons. And not even just genetics, but just in universe. She's what was needed. You know? Because if Rey isn't on Jakku, then the Millennium Falcon doesn't come off of Jakku. They don't meet up with Han Solo. Ben Solo doesn't turn to the light.
Mm-hmm.
It's that easy. Rey is quite literally the reason why Ben turned to the light. Not literally. Is it literally? She's one of the reasons. She's one of the reasons. But
She's a big reason.
yeah.
Definitely a big reason. So,
Ultimately, I think it was the death of Leia that was like, oh shit, what am I even doing this for?
Mm-hmm.
But that's an episode in and of itself, you know.
Yeah.
You're a Kylo guy, right?
Yeah, I like Kylo Ren. I thought he was a great character.
Mm-hmm.
I think it made sense that he seemed like he was kind of entitled as well, because he was, right? You know, he was the son of Senator Organa, you know? Like, he has to be this entitled little kid. You know, he was the son of a pilot war hero, you know?
Grandson of Anakin Skywalker.
Grandson of Anakin Skywalker. He has to be like this entitled, like, guy that, you know, has a lot of pressure on his shoulders. He's the grandson of Anakin. His uncle is Luke Skywalker, the man that killed Emperor Palpatine. At least that's what people like
Thought.
here, right? Obviously, obviously it's Vader that did it, but like in this universe, obviously, like Leia's gonna paint out Luke to be the guy that did it, you know, to make it look. Like, you're not gonna say.
Yeah, everyone thought that Luke destroyed Vader and Palpatine.
Yeah. He burned the body and everything, right? So, so he had a lot of expectations on his shoulders, and the dark side of the Force has like a good way of just like giving you what it is that you want, and what he wanted was the power to make people proud.
Yeah.
And the dark side, you know, it tempted him. It was like, yeah, we can give you that power, you know? And Luke saw that, and he got scared.
And the funny thing is, right, like, Kylo is how people described Anakin. He's whiny, he's angsty, he's cringe at moments. Like, that's literally how people described Anakin.
Kylo follows just as much as Anakin did.
Yeah.
If not more.
The only issue I have with Kylo is that I feel like at a certain, and this isn't an issue with like the character or anything, this is just an in-universe thing. The only issue I have with him is that I feel like he didn't know exactly what he wanted, and that makes him so relatable as a character that they kind of had you rooting for the bad guy.
Oh yeah, for sure. There were many times where I saw Kylo and I was like, damn, bro, Kylo'd be an awesome Jedi, you know?
Yeah, and that's why I think that he's the main character of the sequels. And I think Rey is the engine for sure. You know, she's there, but it's the story of Ben Solo. It's the story of the grandson of Anakin. We're here to find out, like, but it's just the reverse arc with Anakin. You saw him fall to the dark, and then as Vader, you saw him come back to the light. With Kylo, he's already dark, you know. So it really mirrors the original trilogy, as Anakin's already dark, and you just see him slowly but surely each movie return to the light just a little bit, and then you get that tidbit in episode 8 where he's like, you know, like, let's just do this, let's just do it on a whim, like me and you, screw the Jedi, screw the Sith, screw the First Order, screw the Resistance, all of it, like, just me and you, Rey, please, like, we can do this. But of course Rey has the foresight to see, just, you know, this isn't what the Force wants. This isn't the will of the Force. And we're supposed to hate Rey for that. I don't know, man. Like, it's just weird. I remember when the sequels came out in theaters, I was such a huge fan of them. I really was. Each movie as it came out, I thought, Each movie was great, but only for different reasons. Only for different reasons. I felt like there were times in each that I was like, damn, this could actually go somewhere. Ultimately, it didn't lead to anything, but it just had you gripping your seat. It had you really excited. And with Kylo, all I wanted to see was his character redeemed to the light, and I'm really glad that we got it.
I actually had a little bit of time about your theory, by the way, about Kylo being the main character.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at all of the names of the movies, it kind of makes sense, you know? Like, The Force Awakens, right? When did Kylo become his strongest Force-sensitive self? When he started communicating with Rey.
Mm-hmm.
The Force awoken in him, right? The Last Jedi is all about Kylo trying to hunt down who? Luke Skywalker, who he thinks is the Last Jedi.
Yep.
And who technically is the Last Jedi up until Rey becomes the Last Jedi. And then The Rise of Skywalker, Kylo Ren becomes Ben Skywalker.
Yep.
Literally the Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, when he gets tossed into the little abyss, and then he quite literally rises up and helps destroy Palpatine. Yeah.
The Rise. He is a Skywalker, and you know he arose to his true potential. So that is the Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, I just feel like Kylo just never really got a chance, you know? Maybe he didn't live the life that he wanted to. Maybe he didn't get the attention he needed, or just... I purely just think that he was probably really wanting to be a Jedi.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I think his parents just didn't want it to happen. And Han definitely didn't want it to happen. He didn't. Yeah. And I think that's why he hated Han. I think
being a Jedi definitely put a strain on their relationships with Luke. So I can see how, like, Leia and Han not wanting Kylo or Ben to be a Jedi, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I also realized that, you know, with what Luke did, helped them win the war, you know, and her become Senator Organa and the light side prospering over the dark, you know? So
yeah.
I'm like, well, I don't want this for my son, but it's probably best for him, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's where the strain in their relationship came. Like, I bet Han just really wasn't on board, but just said, well, if your mother says yes, if you really want to do it, I don't support it, but... and he probably...
At least you're in the hands of Luke, you know?
Yeah. Probably dropped him off and didn't really look back. And as a kid, like, that's gotta weigh on you, man.
Yeah.
That's really gotta weigh on you. Because speaking personally, my dad wasn't really thrilled about what I wanted to do in college or in high school or anything. And that sucked, because I always felt like I was clamoring and reaching for some sort of appeal, or not appeal, but like approval of his. And maybe Kylo just never had that chance. Maybe he just never had that chance to say, like, Dad, like, this is what I want to do. Why don't you trust me? But yeah, it's just sad. It's really sad, because he really is, in my opinion, the MVP of the sequels. And I'd love to see his story told a bit more. He's the reason why I'm writing my book. Just so I could tell a little bit of his story, give more context, and try and do justice to George Lucas, Dave Filoni, and Kylo Ren. Because I thoroughly enjoy these boys. But anything else that you want to touch on?
No, I think as far as that goes, we pretty much got everything out there, you know? Like, definitely think that people need to just kind of rein it in a little bit, you know? Just if you're not enjoying it, then just take a step back. Find something that you're enjoying instead. Stop just raining hate on something that other people enjoy, or even if they don't enjoy. They just don't want you to see them see. They don't want to see you. Like just hating on things that you don't need to hate on, because it's not going to change it.
Yeah, and whatever you do, don't send hate to the actors. Like, they're human beings.
Yeah.
They're just doing their job.
Yeah, I think the actors did a really good job even in the last 3 movies. The actors did really good jobs, man. Like, as much as I hate the character, the actress for AlsoTeeko was not a bad AlsoTeeko. So
No, exactly. And
yeah,
I guess the thing to leave off is just remember to be a fan. Remember what it's like to be a kid. I feel like people just forget that. Remember what it's like to be a kid. You know?
That definitely has a part to do with it too. The fact that like when you're a kid, you're more open to less open to criticism and more open to like idealism.
Yeah.
So like you'll definitely see like Anakin and be like, oh, that's so cool. And then you're looking at Rey and you're like, yeah, but what about this? What about that? It's like, yeah, but you're not looking at it through the creative eyes of a child.
Yeah.
Your vision of it is warped.
Just try being a fan a little bit more. That's all I will say. But for Fred and myself, that was episode 8 of the Archives podcast. Appreciate you all, and don't forget to drop a like on the podcast, give it a 5-star review, and share it with your homies everywhere you go. As far as the podcast goes, we'll be back on the normal time slot of Wednesday at 5 p.m. next week. And we appreciate you guys for your patience. Make sure to send us in all your questions, comments, concerns at Star Wars TAP on Twitter and Instagram. And don't forget to tap in. With peace, love, and serenity, may the Force be with you.